The Dagga couple, Julian Stobbs and Myrtle Clark, headed back to the Pretoria High Court that was on Wednesday in a bid to have marijuana legalized. Well, the couple were arrested back in 2010 for possession of marijuana and have since spearheaded a campaign to get this drug decriminalized and regulated, stating that marijuana is not a gateway drug to other more harmful narcotics. Well, for today's talking point, we ask the question, should Dagga be legalized? Yay or nay? What are your thoughts? Well, in studio, I'm joined by two representatives from yesterday's clinical cannabis convention, which was held here in Johannesburg. With me is Dr. Keith Scott and international observer Dr. Raquel Peyraube. I'm going to ask you just to run that by me again so that I don't mispronounce your surname.
It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you for joining us as well. We do appreciate your time. Let's begin by providing a little bit of context. Where are we at the moment in the South African context? I'm not sure if you can bring us up to speed. Is it allowed, are you allowed to be in possession of it in your house, but not to produce it or sell it? It's murky waters there. Perhaps you can clarify for us.
Yes, well, it is a bit confusing because there was a ruling in the High Court that people should be allowed, in the Cape Town High Court, that people should be able to use it in their homes in a private way. But the general opinion amongst lawyers is that it is still illegal. So if you want to be completely safe about using cannabis, it's considered illegal in the country at this point.
So if I were to ask you the question, should it be legalized, yes or no, what's your position?
Well, you know, I'm coming from a country
Yes.
where we legalize for all uses, that is adult use, industrial, and also medical purposes. So, and I was one who was advising the bill, so the answer is pretty clear, yes, of course. And why? Because prohibition has killed more people than any drug all over the world. You can compare how many diseases, how many people die, how many people incarcerated, and how much violence we have in our neighborhoods because of the war on drugs. So I have no doubt that we have to legalize, but also because, you know, in countries such as South Africa, prohibitionism has violated not only personal human rights and civil rights, but also one right is for all the community. That is a cultural right. You have been producing, using, and controlling safety for 100 years and 100 years. So what's going on? It's many countries where cannabis has been an ancestral drug, has been, because of the conventions, has been forbidden. But it's even more serious, this story, because, you know, drug conventions are hierarchically inferior to human rights convention. And it's not possible to respect both. So it's also an issue of what conventions each country is respecting.
Doc, I imagine you echo those sentiments?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your motivations and the reasons behind that, because I've heard the economic argument, people saying if you do legalize it, it will, you'll be able to derive revenue from the industry. It will not be an underground black market industry, but we could, you know, derive tax from it. There have been those who say it's not a gateway drug at all, and it is just as harmful or not harmful as alcohol. So what's your particular motivation for why you say we should legalize it?
Well, there are several motivations. First of all, humans have been taking psychoactive substances that affect the brain, historically for thousands of years. So it's in our genes to want to take substances for two reasons: to feel better if we're feeling bad, and also just to feel really nice. And animals do that too. That's firstly. The second reason is that most people who use drugs don't become addicted to them. There's this misconception, you're given a drug and you take them. There are people who take heroin their whole lives, they don't really become addicted. That's like having beer. Not all people who use alcohol become alcoholics, a small percentage do, and it's the same for all the other drugs. There's evidence in that regard. The other point...
So there are no drugs that are more addictive than others?
Well, they are, but in general, most people who use drugs, even banned drugs regularly, do not become addicted. People become addicted because they have psychological issues, they have mental illnesses, or they have dire social circumstances. They use drugs because they're in a terrible situation, and those drugs help them cope. Just like we doctors give people tranquilizers and other drugs to get them through situations. And people self-medicate with things, and people with mental illnesses are known to take more illicit drugs than people who don't have those illnesses. The other reason is drug use in itself. If someone takes a drug, it is a victimless crime, now that it's a crime. Therefore, it shouldn't be a crime at all. And people who want a drug, they're going to go and look for someone to supply it. So the person who supplies it to them is also committing a victimless crime. And that's a very important thing for people to understand. That, and you've got to relate everything to something like alcohol, which is the most harmful drug of all. There's science, and we heard that at this convention. The top expert in the world on drug harms was talking about that. And that is why it becomes a human rights issue, and obviously the tax issues like that. And the bottom line is that the harms of the laws are causing far more problems than addiction and the harms of the drugs themselves. That is absolute.
In my country, the reasons to legalize were three groups of reasons. Security issues, just to avoid more corruption. The democracy and weakness in the democracy is because of corruption. Public health issues, not only to treat diseases with this product, with this there is a medical use of cannabis, and for many diseases, conventional medicines have no answer yet. And also because human rights issues.
Yes.
And this, what our numbers are showing, because we started thinking about this because 70 years of prohibition haven't good result.
Do you know, I want to take a look at those arguments just now, because what's coming through are themes like everything in moderation, and it shouldn't be harmful. There are more people who have died from taking selfies than from using marijuana, I've heard a colleague of mine saying. So we'll look at those themes in just a moment, and also take a look at alternative view, the Christian perspective. Joining us after the break from our Cape Town studio, we'll be taking a voice of Christian View organization to find out what they have to say about this particular debate. Make sure you don't go anywhere.
News happens fast. Stories break all the time. It's hard to keep track. That's why we bring you the top stories of the past 7 days in just half an hour. Catch up with Week in One. This weekend, only on ENCA.
Welcome back. We continue today's talking point. The question is, should marijuana be legalized? Well, we continue with our guests in studio in just a moment, but let's hear from the Christian perspective. In our Cape Town studios, joining us on the line now, Philip Rosenthal from Christian View organization. Philip, thank you very much for availing yourself with this particular discussion. Let's perhaps give you an opportunity to respond to what my guests have had to say, saying that, prohibition does more harm and more damage than the drug usage itself.
Okay. Firstly, just to respond to the question of the legal status, the police have sent out a notice that they are prosecuting exactly the same. This decision of the Cape High Court is suspended while it's on appeal. It will be heard in November, so there's no change on that side. Secondly, this argument, the set of arguments, firstly, with that drugs help people cope in difficult situations, that is trying to bring in a medical argument into what these people are arguing for, which is recreational use. They were arrested with almost 2 kilograms of marijuana, which is enough for them to smoke every day for the next 8 years. So this is not about medical use at all. And to me, that's a smokescreen for what this court case is about. Then the argument this is a victimless crime, their own witnesses, Dr. Nutt argued multiple social harms of all of these drugs, so this is not just a victimless crime, it impacts on many other people, including the employers, the families, the children, people who inhale children who inhale secondary marijuana smoke, children who accidentally come across edible marijuana, eat them, as is the situation in Colorado, as reported by the Colorado Health Department, where they have legalized this the last 4 years, with very severe impact. Then in terms of Dr. Nutt's evidence saying that alcohol is more harmful, that is very misleading for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because what they're doing there is comparing an alcoholic for alcohol with a common user, and they're fudging the issue. Now, I would agree that, yes, if you are an alcoholic, that is going to do you more harm than cannabis. But most people who drink alcohol are not alcoholics. If you're only drinking 1 glass a week of alcohol, that is not going to do you a massive amount of harm. Whereas the impacts of cannabis are entirely different from alcohol. They can last for 3 weeks to a month after the person has smoked something, and that is going to inhibit their brain. Okay, now the scoring system that was used in Dr. Nutt's study, which was put forward as evidence, put only 1/10 of the weighting, that is the scoring, onto the impact on your mental capacity. Now, the thing is that if you put more importance on that particular factor, then you would come up with a different answer. So it depends how you put the weighting. And to me, that is not a scientific approach. I'm a qualified person in the field of environmental impact assessment, which includes social impact assessment, and the Department of Environment Affairs would not accept that as a valid form of social impact assessment. It might be an interesting scientific graph, but it is not a valid form of social impact assessment, because the impact on the common user who is taking a moderate amount is entirely different when you compare alcohol and cannabis. Then in terms of this Uruguayan argument, we have not got a lot of data out of Uruguay in terms of the result. We do have more data out of Colorado, and that data which I've looked at is negative. I also know that the majority of Uruguayans, 3/4 of them, did not agree with this decision and were not happy with it. They might have supported their government for other reasons, but they were not happy with this decision. And to me, it is a hijacking of democracy for the court to make a decision that affects so many people. You've got now a 1/4 of the youth in Colorado that are smoking marijuana. Do we want that in South Africa? That can have very severe impacts, and to me, they haven't defended their case properly.
Philip, thank you so much for that. If I may just interject very quickly, I see you, Dr. Raquel, nodding away profusely, shaking your head, saying, I disagree, I disagree. With what in particular do you disagree?
With everything.
Okay.
Obviously, the data this person is getting are not, I don't know where he's getting the information. I'm a member of also of a team at the university in Uruguay where we research and monitorize the law. What I can say is when there are in the neighborhoods, when they are already, you can buy cannabis, or there are clubs, or you are self-cultivating, the 3 ways allowed by our law for adult use. I don't like to talk about recreational purposes. It should be said adult use, because it includes everything. The sales of other drugs have decreased, criminality and also violence. So these data are not enough to say what's going wrong in Uruguay. Secondly, it's not true. This man is not comparing, Mr. Philip, is not comparing the same amount of use of cannabis with alcohol. This is a way, you know, many people has misleading general population to information. If you compare the same doses of alcohol with cannabis, and I'm a doctor specialized in cannabis, is in the difference is so big regarding alcohol harmful. is so pretty much bigger for alcohol than for cannabis.
Doc, let's bring you in there. You know, smoking a joint versus a glass of wine, is it the same harmful effects?
No.
What do you think?
Just the first point in terms of being a victimless crime, what I'm saying is that using a drug in itself, in other words, actually taking a drug is a victimless crime. There are no victims. There might be other social consequences, like with alcohol. You know, you get in a car and you're drunk, you drive, you kill people. It's the same with drugs. Drinking alcohol, someone who smokes a joint is doing no more harm than someone who has a glass of wine. Now, I'd just like people to understand out there, because this gentleman is not presenting the facts correctly. Alcohol causes 7 different types of common cancers. Cancers of the mouth, the esophagus, etc., as well as things like cirrhosis. 7 cancers. Breast cancer, it's a major cause of breast cancer. Even 1 glass a day. Cannabis doesn't cause any cancer. It does have side effects. Every drug has. Alcohol is responsible for over 3 million deaths a year. Cannabis, 0. So for those people out there, those are the facts. Thank you. That's what I'd like to say.
Let's give an opportunity to Philip to also respond there. Philip, psychoactive substances, cannabis and alcohol have been said to be exactly the same thing. I mean, Jesus turned water into wine. What do you say about perhaps legalizing marijuana? It may stop, as people have said, the manipulation of marijuana and putting other substances that are harmful. It may regulate exactly what goes in there. Your response?
Okay, firstly, sorry, if I could respond to Dr. Scott's comments. My reason on the difference was that basically if you would need to be taking a substantial amount of alcohol every 2 days in order for it to have a permanent impact on you, whereas in cannabis you would only need to be smoking it once every 3 weeks, okay? And you're also looking at the social impact of people dropping out of school, dropping out of university, and being impaired so that they cannot participate in certain difficult professions that require concentration. And that was even admitted to by Dr. Nutt in his evidence, where he said, for example, that pilots and emergency services workers would need to carry on abstaining. Okay, so now you've got a case example. Julian Stobbs was an air traffic controller. That is an example of a profession which is not safe with cannabis. But look, in terms of this this question of the harmful effects of alcohol, yes, I agree that taking alcohol regularly is harmful, and the Medical Research Council is recommending tightening the laws on alcohol at the moment. But that is not an argument to now liberalize the laws on cannabis to have then an increased harm. I disagree with this argument about victimless crimes, and particularly in terms of drug trading, which is what we're looking at as implied in the situation where the person has been arrested with 8 years of supply. I'd also like to ask Dr. Scott to respond to 4 medical claims which are on the website of Fields of Green, but which to me are quite frankly ridiculous. And I was told that that at least one of these was repeated by some of these activists at the Cannabis Convention. That claim was that the high is part of the healing process. I don't see any medical support for that. Then there's the claim that it basically causes cancerous cells to commit suicide. Now, Dr. Abrams clarified that that impact has only been shown in a test tube. There's no evidence that that actually happens on a living human being. Then they say on their website that you could argue that THC is in the same league as breast milk in terms of safety. Not true. Then they say surgery, chemo, and radiation should be avoided, but can be used in conjunction with cannabis oil. Now, and further on social media, they're talking about numerous people stopping their chemotherapy in order to use cannabis oil instead. Now, to me, these are ridiculous medical claims, and the medical experts need to very firmly disassociate with these, because this is now being used as a lever for this misinformation.
Yeah, Philip, we're going to have to leave it there for the time being, but Dr. Scott, let me quickly give you about 15 seconds or so to wrap up that argument and respond to what Philip had to say.
Well, Philip is taking a whole lot of issues and throwing them at us, and I can't answer any of them because a lot of them are inaccurate. I've got nothing to do with the Fields of Green for website, so he must deal with them themselves, not for me. I'm here to talk about my my approach to cannabis. Thank you very much.
Yes, Doctor, I can see you're itching to say something else.
Because, you know, this kind of debate is what we has allowed this problem goes bigger. Why? Because you are not comparing data against data. It's opinion, he has already said, it's my opinion, against data. We have data. For example, I want to know which country all over the world has decreased the increasing of use of cannabis. Uruguay. All the countries have more than 1.5% increasing each year. Uruguay, since 2014, and we legalized in 2013, is having 0.8. That is the rhythm of increasing of use of cannabis is decreasing. This is data, and official data. It's not my opinion.
Goodness me, yeah. Statistics and counter-statistics. It seems it's a battle of research findings here versus opinions as well. Dr. Keith Scott, thank you so much for your time. Dr. Raquel Peyraube. Goodness, it's been a challenge all morning.
Raquel.
Thank you very much, Raquel. I do appreciate your time. And of course, Philip Rosenthal from Christian View Organization joining us from Cape Town. My thanks to you all for contributing to this debate. Weekend Wake Up continues after the break, and when we come back, the newspapers. Stay with us.